Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 79 of the Whitey and Wills Sports Show. It is Sunday, August 20th, which means that we are less than a week away from the opening of another Effingham High School football season. And with that in mind, we have got a returning guest joining the show today. It is ninth year Effingham football coach Brett Hefner. Brett, does it feel like 9 years since you've been in Effingham? To me, you feel
Well, I
like
tell
a
you
new
what,
guy.
no, it doesn't. This year has some reminders of the first couple. This has been a trying off season for us. Our numbers are down a little bit. We're back to a small senior class after having some big senior classes. So that part of it's been a little bit trying. And then we've had some injuries jump up and catch us this off season as we got into camp. Particularly with our offensive linemen. So we're dealing with a few things there that we haven't had to deal with in a while. So it's been a little trying from that standpoint. But no, so in terms of 9 years, it's been a fast 9 years. I know that, but it seemed just like yesterday we were getting started.
Hey, with the number of coaches Effingham has had in its history, you're already even with Drew Potoff for the third most years coaching in Effingham High School history, just because you got Jack Klosterman and Mike McDonald taking up almost 50 years of school history. So it's it's going to take a while to catch either of those guys.
It'd take a while to catch those two guys. You are correct.
But yeah, any question about your team this year has to start with that talk about how many seniors graduated. 23 guys graduated off of last year's team. Last year was a playoff year. You had to go to Rochester and play a really tough team that ended up playing in the state semifinals. But a lot of names, including everyone's going to go to quarterback first, starting quarterback to replace. But really, you look at some of the names on that senior list, and there's some awfully good players. But that's a challenge every year.
It's a challenge every year. But to lose that many is tough. The other tough part for me, where I was nervous about losing that group, was kind of the last group that had any connection to the 17, 18, 19, 20 group, that they were around those kids. And I think that's important too. So small number of seniors this year with only 13. We do return some key spots and some key guys. I think that will give us a chance. I still think, and yeah, the game has changed. And if you listen, even like Nick Saban has changed. Like he, used to running the football and playing defense. Maybe at the college and pro level, that's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. It's scoring now and how many people. But in high school football, I still think at the end of the day, it's playing defense, running the football, not turning the ball over, because we don't deal with the consistent talent level year in, year out that those guys get, that they can go and recruit. Sure. Number one. Number two, you're still going to get some weather that's going to interfere with our games. You got to be able to do those things. So for us, we return quite a few people, and the strength for us is going to be our front seven defensively. So I think anytime that you can get after the quarterback and you can defend the run with just those guys, you're going to have a chance. And so if we're going to have a returning group, that's a pretty good group to have back. So for us, I don't think we're going to have to worry about that as much with having Charlie back, Eli back, Michael Love back, Spencer Fox back. We had Caden Coverline hops over from fullback to linebacker, so he played 10 varsity football games last year. We have a young man by the name of Caden Metzner, who's a big junior that will start at defensive end, and then Zach Donaldson jumps in where Miles played, and Zach played in quite a few games last year for us. So that group's going to give us a chance. So the question marks then become, defensive back. We're going to have defensive backs that haven't played before, and so that's a question. And then offensively, our offensive line guys. Having Weldon back at tailback, he's going to be bigger, faster, and stronger. Having Andrew Lotz back at receiver, that's going to help. The quarterback, as you mentioned, Gage Gillum will start at quarterback for us. And Gage has been in the system for 4 years. He just doesn't have many game reps, and fortunately for us, with as much stuff as we do, where we separate and have 22 different starters, we can go a lot of ones versus ones in practice. And we've done that to try and get him the equivalent of game reps before we get into a game. So that, I think, any time that you start 22 different guys, that's an added benefit. So our guys are going against starters every year. And for me being in charge of the offense, it's maddening at times because be honest with you, like we can't block them. Like it's hard to block them. But that's a good problem. It's good and bad. Now the last few days we've done a little bit better, as we should. We've done a little bit better at blocking them. And if they were winning every battle, or we were winning every battle, we'd be in trouble. But the fact that we can win some and we've won a few more lately is a positive. So those are things that we've tried to do and that we do to try and speed up the learning curve for those guys that haven't played. You try and block those guys. It's, and then you try and tackle well, then you try and, so there's some things that we can do in practice that hopefully have sped up our game readiness going into this week.
Yeah, you talk about your front seven defensively, and they can, and you've just alluded to it, they can do a lot to alleviate the pressure on some new guys in the secondary if they can get the quarterback scrambling, if they can, force you into situations where the pass is coming. They can do some things to sort of steer things in the direction of your strengths.
Yeah, it's still at the end of the day, I think at every level of football, the games are still won and lost up front. And
sure.
So I know this. I'm glad those 4, 6, 7 guys are on our side. I am happy about that. I wouldn't want to block those guys every Friday night. Like it hasn't been fun. It's been good for our guys, like I said, to get some working on it. But that group is pretty good, and there's going to be a lot of people we play. They're going to have their hands full trying to block them.
Brett, Michael Love's just a junior now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So he's a junior. He had a heck of a year last year. Was unanimous all-conference guy. Charlie's a three-year starter, and Eli would have started every game last year, but we dealt with eligibility, an IHSA ruling, to where we didn't get him ruled eligible until week 8. And he's, so he's 6'1", 6'2", 300 pounds. Michael's 215 pounds, ridiculously athletic and strong. Oh. Charlie's 225 pounds and probably the strongest kid on the team. Caden Metzner, who a lot of people are going to get to know, he's 6'2", 215 pounds, athletic and strong. Spencer, of course, was a second-team all-conference linebacker. Right. And Caden Coberline's about 100, 195 pounds and played every game at fullback, not shy about contact. So even though it's a different position, he got 10 games of varsity speed. So like those guys, it has not been fun all summer and all camp to try and block those guys. I'm sure our guys are looking forward. It doesn't matter who it is. They're just looking forward to seeing somebody different.
Yeah. And the thing, watching Michael Love, I'm just so impressed how quick he is off the ball.
Yeah.
And then he's not just quick off the ball. Obviously, he's very strong and plays very well in his position, but he also has pretty good instincts.
Yeah, he does. The other thing that separates those guys, and we spend a lot of time on it, just how hard they play. People would be amazed if they watched game film. Like if they sat down with a coach and watched game film, watched opponent game film, and watch how people react when the play's away from them. How they react. And the guy that we steal, like coaches steal all the time. Like I tell everybody, I've never had the only original thoughts I've ever had are bad ones. And so you constantly steal from, whether it be, I constantly pay attention to what does Nick Saban say? What are the coaches saying? What are they doing? Like, what do they say? What can you use and take it back to you? And so guy that was the defensive coordinator at Michigan, Don Brown, who is now, I think he's the head coach at Colgate or something like that. But he said your worth to your team defensively is at the end of the play, how many guys are in the film screen. And if you're not in the frame or that film at the end of a play, you might as well be playing for the other team. So we use that, and we use a lot with them. Hey, you play like your hair's on fire and the ball's the water, and just get hats to the ball. And those guys like Michael, all of a sudden you start taking those guys that are gifted athletically and gifted strength-wise, and they don't take plays off. And now all of a sudden they chase something down from the backside, or they chase something. We talk about it all the time. There's 165 to 175 plays in a football game. in the average high school football game. And we tell them all the time, hey, if you can tell me that this one play isn't going to matter, then I'll shut up and I won't get on you about you not playing hard. But because you can't tell us what that one play is, you can't take it off. So that's the other thing that kind of separates him. And all of our guys do that. But when you're gifted like that, it would be real easy to take a play off if it's away from you or something like that. And he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and just, you mentioned that with Nick Saban being, people being in the screen. I remember back in the days when Lovie Smith was the D coordinator for the Rams back in their heyday, and it was 11 guys on the ball. He wanted to see 11 guys at every tackle,
Yeah, we done that
again,
too.
the same concept.
Yeah, he would chart moves. Yeah. And we talked about that, like, hey, if you have to speed up, and he used to say that, if you have to speed up, it's a loaf. You should have been going that hard from the beginning.
Right. No, I agree. That's the thing. And I think, defensively, especially in high school or high school football, you can frustrate your opponent by, taking away a lot of things they want to do and make them, kind of do the things they're not comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a key.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. We talk about that, like we say, the toughest team wins, which nowadays in society, if you can be tougher, it's worth 1 or 2 wins, which that's just how society's going, And then you just said it, what do you do to make your opponent uncomfortable? And if you don't do anything to make them uncomfortable, you're probably going to have a hard time winning.
Right. You go up, I remember Taylorville back in the day when Coach Odom was throwing the ball, you let a quarterback like him stand and throw all day without worrying about anything, you're going to be in trouble. But, like you said, if you can do things defensively, that's going to help immensely. And again, field position game, that all comes into play. And so, I look forward to
I'm more than happy to have those guys backing on our side. I'm telling you.
I agree.
And again, when you talk about where your inexperience on the team lies, being on the offensive side of the ball more, a defense can also alleviate some of the pressure on them to put them in positions where
just help them out. That's what we tell them. Just, we tell them all the time, guys, we'll get it figured out. We'll get it figured out. Like Weldon's going to make plays, Gage, like we're going to make plays. Just, and the great thing about our kids, we're lucky. I tell anybody that will listen, we got tremendous kids. We got great kids. They buy in. There's no separation. If people would probably, if they actually came out to a practice, and I enjoy it. We've kind of built it this way. Our kids will get after each other. And I mean, it is relentless, not only physically, but verbally. There's a lot of chirping back and forth, and there's a lot of between the offense and the defense, but it's healthy. And when it's done, it's done. And they know they're all pulling the boat in the same direction and all those things. But that competitive culture and that has been established long before these guys. And but if people came out of practice, like during the course of a segment, they may think, God, these kids really don't like each other. And what they don't realize is that it's pretty healthy competition. It doesn't go over the line. And when the segment's over, they're the first guys laughing and joking with each other as they're going to get water.
Right. Who's your O-line? You got what? 2 kids?
Yeah, I tell you what, man, we've had some freak things, man. It's been tough. Like, so Rylan Powell's, I thought Rylan would probably end up starting for us, having a really solid chance to start for us. Well, first of all, before I get into that, this was a group that when they came in as freshmen that I thought potentially had a chance to be a really good offensive line group. So with that being said, most of them are just juniors. So so from that inexperience, so going into it, there were about 6 or 7 of them that I thought were battling for 5 spots. And, if we needed to play all of them, we would. And so in camp, at the end of camp, Rylan had really developed and had come along and kept growing, and just a freak thing. He stepped on somebody's foot and went down. Well, I thought it was an ankle or, something like whenever you step on somebody's foot. Well, it turned out to be a hip injury, pretty significant hip injury. So we're waiting to find out if he's going to have surgery on that or not. So he's been out. Brady Stortson, will be our starting center. He had an incident in the weight room where he slipped and fell doing a lift. He slipped and ended up injuring his ankle. We're hopeful to get him back week 2. And then just the other day, James Weiss suffered he was going to start at tackle for us. He's about 6'3", 285-pound sophomore, and had really started to play well. And pretty significant knee injury, dislocated his knee. So we will not have him this year. So now that group that on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday prior to James's injury, we're really starting to gel and play well.
Right.
And we were finally starting to block those guys to where everybody was like, oh, okay, like there better be some people hang on now, because if our guys are starting to block these guys, like, oh, and where we're going to be at defensively, like this has a chance to be a pretty fun, exciting year, and it still will be. But so we've had to make a decision with that injury, like, okay, what's the best, and this is what's toughest from a coaching standpoint, what's the best course of action within this to deal with this. So the start of the year, Robinson was a playoff team last year.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Carmel returns everybody. Quarterback just committed to Carbondale. And so they're always a quarterfinal, semifinal team, depending upon when they play Unity. And then Mater Dei week 3. Right. So we're hopeful to have Brady back week 2. So then it becomes, all right, so what do you do? What moving parts do you play here? The kid that had been playing center, do you leave him at center until Brady comes back and then move him to tackle? Or do you just go ahead and make the move now and play a really inexperienced sophomore who's done a really nice job, but at the end of the day, they're still a sophomore. They're still physically right. A sophomore. And do you go ahead and make the move to kick him out to tackle now, which is where he will be for the remainder of the year when Brady comes back, so that when Brady comes back, there's only one moving part, somebody mm-hmm. coming in, somebody coming out. So those are the things that you have to try and balance as a coach. And you hope you make the right decision. So we've kind of gone in the direction of, we just went ahead and kicked him from center out, and think that, because again, the hard part about it is that poor kid's trying to block, no different than the kid we moved. He's trying to block Eli and Charlie Ring. Well, he's not seeing Eli and Charlie Ring in week 1. He may not even be seeing them in week 2. So that's the other part where you can sit there and go, God, he's struggling. Well, I don't know if we got anybody on our team that wouldn't struggle.
Sure. Yeah.
Those two. So those are the things you can try and balance going into it, because I think at the end of the day, you have to do what you got to do. You feel you have to do to win that game, and all you're worried about is that game. But at the same time, I have to look beyond that game. I can say, yes, we're worrying about that game and that game only, which we are. But I have to worry about, okay, is there something we can do now that is also going to be beneficial down the road? So that's
week 3.
That all happened. Yeah, that all happened on Wednesday and Thursday, going into the Meet the Hearts on Friday night. So there were still some things that Friday night were pretty ugly, because guys that was only day 2 of those guys being in those spots. So we went ahead and made that decision. So hopefully they get a full week this week at it, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, the good news is that you got a totally normal week to get ready for this game, and it's not going to be in the upper 90s all week, to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. I joke about it. I understand you got to be safe and all that. They don't have these rules in Texas and Florida and Georgia and all these other places like it. I understand why
you're warm in those states.
Yeah, I understand why you have to do it, because there's been people that didn't handle it correctly. So I understand why there's rules in place. We've talked about that too going into it. The issue becomes this: everybody says, "Why don't you go before school?" I'd love to. We've got 4 to 6 starters that have class before 7 o'clock,
mm-hmm.
between CEO and C-Tech, and so it's just not that simple. So you can't just say, well, hey, we're going to go before school. So then, yeah, you're correct. Now tomorrow I think we'll be okay after school. Now those next few days to go right after school with the IHSA rules, probably not. But it's not that, we go at 7:30 at night. If you want to know the truth, that's when you're going to be playing anyway. So I don't know that that's any bad. And I'm not going to lie to you. We kicked this around a few years ago. Muhammad Seymour does it.
Yeah.
I've often thought about doing it. Like, it's hard for guys like I'm an old guy. So it sounds, I'm still trying to learn and be in touch with the new age kids. But like when you see how colleges and professional sports have to take social media breaks and phone breaks like every 45 minutes or to an hour or whatever. Muhammad went to this. They practice at night. And the whole reason they allow kids then after school, if they need to go see a teacher to get help, they can go see a teacher to get help. It gives them a chance to go home, unwind from school, deal with whatever schoolwork, get something to eat or whatever, and come back. And I'm not so sure it's not the best thing in the world to do. So we kicked it around. We didn't pull the trigger because the only field that we have that has lights is the stadium, and the band practices in the stadium 2 nights a week. So that would kind of make it difficult to do that. But so this week, having to go in the evening, it's not necessarily a big deal as long as we can go over behind the junior high. If those lights still work, we play on grass this week anyway. And to go at 7 or 7:30 at night, in all honesty, we might kind of like it.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean that's matching your game time. And Dustin and I talked about that a little bit for
you did
earlier. I mean, that's your game time. I mean, it's like,
yeah. So I don't know. See, I know this, and somebody had, and I don't want to move the game. Like somebody had brought that. I saw some chatter online about that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play. I don't want to move. I don't care what the temperature is going to be on Saturday. I don't want to move it to Saturday. That's losing a day of recovery. That's losing a day of recovery going into your next game.
You can't do that because we got to put 4 baseball games on the radio Saturday morning anyway. So
I'm all for it. I'd rather push the game to 7:30 or whatever. I mean, it's going to be hot no matter what. Even on Saturday, it's going to be warm, even if it's not as warm. I don't like losing days of recovery and stuff like that, especially early in the year.
Well, there's a lot of stuff I want to touch on. I don't want to take a whole lot of your time, mostly because I know you got meetings to get to this evening. But you've mentioned Weldon Dunston a couple of times. You mentioned Andrew Lutz. When you have a new quarterback coming in, to have those other skill position guys who had the reps last year and put up numbers, that's important. And Weldon kind of got forced into it last year. He was not necessarily going to be the guy, but injury pushed him into it. And by
the end of the year, he was playing very well. And it's just like everything. You and I had talked post game a number of times. We talked with Greg, you guys after the game. Mm-hmm. Everybody marveled at the development John had, and it's no different than any other position. The more reps you get at it, and the more times you run a play, and more time, it's a feel thing. You just become more comfortable. And there's cuts that they make and things that they do where they just get a timing of it. And so Weldon got to that point at the end of the year. Now he's kind of starting back over a little bit this year because anytime your offensive line is new, and then like I said, trying to block the guys that we're trying to block. Mm-hmm. But he's had a really good offseason. He's a tremendously hard worker. Ran track, never missed weight room workouts, has put on weight, has gotten stronger, has gotten faster. And so the biggest thing we can do to help Gage is the better that we can run the ball,
right,
the better life is going to be for him, because now we can sprinkle him into the run game. He's going to be a terrific runner for us. He's going to be drastically different than Tanner. Tanner was a bruising, physical guy. Gage can run with anybody on our team. So he's going to be a little bit more quicker to take off and go. The thing that we've had to stress with him is we don't have much older depth behind him. The next guys behind him are sophomores. And so whereas Tanner with having Gage, Tanner could be a little bit more physical, and that, like, we've had to talk to Gage of, hey, you don't need to take unnecessary hits. Like if the game's on the line and it's for a first down and it's to win the game, that's one thing. Otherwise, just take your yardage, get out of bounds, do those things, like live for another day. Like, we got a lot of weeks to play.
Right. So that you're kind of hitting on the one of the thing I wanted to ask about Gage Gillum, which is, what he does well, what strengths he brings to the table. So obviously,
I'll tell you what, Dustin, he's got a very strong arm. He's got a very live arm. He's a very live arm, and he's not far from it. He's not as quick. If you remember the difference, like between Shackelford running, like, he could take off and go, whereas Tanner was more, and Landon was more, I got to get going, but I'm going to be big and physical. Gage has a little bit more of that quick, explosive boom, and go. But I mean, shoot, he's 6'4", 190 pounds. I mean, he's a pretty good sized kid and got long strides. And when he takes off pretty quick for somebody that long and lanky. And
right.
The big thing that we've had to do with this stretch is get him, like I said earlier, get him as many live reps as we can, because that's the biggest thing. And Tanner dealt with that as a junior. We had to try and do that same thing and try and speed up the live reps. And those first couple of days of live reps, I mean, you could tell. I mean, I tell people this all the time. If you go back and look at that modern day game for 2019, and Shaq was a kid that had played quarterback his whole life. And that Friday night, you'd have thought he'd never even taken a snap. And he'd tell you that. Just all over the place, just the first. And then you came back that Saturday, and it was like he was a 10-year veteran. And so you just need game reps. So I learned real quickly from that, in that when you get inexperienced guys, you got to try and get them game quality reps the best you can. So we've done that through live 7-on-7, live team, live, just to do that. And the first week that we did that, and he'll tell you it was ugly. Now the last week has been quite a bit better. Just, I mean, you can do stuff on air and you can go through stuff, but until you get out there in live reps and you hear about NFL guys talk about all the time, and inexperienced college guys, just how fast everything moves.
Mm-hmm.
You have to throw the ball. All of a sudden, when coach says, "Hey, it's 1, 2, 3, hitch up and throw," well, coach, he's not there yet. No, he's not going to be there yet, dude. But if you wait until after that, A, you're going to get hit, and B, it's probably going to get picked off by the other team, and they're going to be playing the fight song. So, but until you do it, until you trust it. So this last week, you know, that's improved drastically as well.
And you got to believe that he is going to learn from the experience and the increased reps, because otherwise, I mean, he wouldn't get to the point where he is your quarterback, you know, if you didn't have that faith in him, from not just from this year, but from what you've seen.
Yeah, and if you want to know the truth, in all honesty, it's why we weren't scared to run Tanner last year. And it was necessary for us because we had lost John. Weldon was inexpensive, like inexperienced. And so it was a necessary evil, but because we had Gage sitting there, we didn't have to be as careful in the timing of the carries and stuff like that. And this year we're going to have to be a little bit more mindful of that. And
one other thing, Coach, who else?
No, go ahead.
Other than Weldon, who else you got running the ball for you this year?
Well, Spencer, we still have Spencer. Spencer will be the next guy in there. We have a sophomore by the name of DJ Latham. DJ's had a nice fall camp. And then another sophomore, Hunter Holland. So again, it's lighter and experienced guys, but we have Spencer that we can roll back there, and Spencer's had some carries throughout his career if we have to that we can use.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to know about kicking because Armando Estrada has been so good for so long.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate in the kicking game. We have a young man by the name of Michael Sefton.
Okay.
Well, Michael is a sophomore. Michael's a heck of a soccer player, heck of a story from Columbia. And he had a really successful summer playing with Scott Gallagher down out of St. Louis, but he's a pretty talented kicker. He kicked some for us last year at the fresh soft level just to try it out, see how it went, and see how, and so we're very fortunate from that standpoint. Yes, I agree with you. We've been very blessed in my time here, from starting with Danny Hortenstein to Ivan Angel to my son Bo to Armando, Ozzie when he jumped in for a little bit, and then Armando taking it. And then we've also been fortunate. We've had very good punters. Yes. Tanner was a heck of a punter. We've had very good punters. Now, you may see a little bit of a drop there in terms of distance and all that, but kicking wise, Michael's an outstanding kicker, which is a big thing. He has extra points, but he does have the ability to knock in some field goals. But the big thing for us is kickoffs. And so just to give you an instance, last week we probably did, I'm trying to think, on Wednesday we did probably about 10 kickoffs, and there was not one of them that landed outside the 5-yard line. They were all 5-yard line and in the end zones.
Well, and when defense is going to be the obvious strength, I mean, that's only compounded when you're forcing teams to go 80, 70 yards per possession. So that's
good to hear. So we're fortunate there, and we're fortunate he's just a sophomore. Mm-hmm. So That's very, very good for us. Very good for us going forward.
Well, now one other thing I want to hit on, and I want to make sure we talk about, is that your schedule looks a lot different this year than it did last year. Between Lincoln leaving the conference and the contracts with St. Teresa and Highland ending, there's 3 new teams on the schedule, and we'll see 2 of them right off the bat. Effingham fans are obviously familiar with Robinson, but it's been over a decade since we had to make that trip. But that's that's who you open with, and they're coming off of a pretty successful season.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's somebody. I got to be careful how I answer it, because you can make people mad however you say it. So,
sure.
Ironically, we play one more playoff team this year than we played last year.
Right.
So everybody look at it and say, well, your schedule, well, it just doesn't seem maybe to people as top heavy, because you don't have a state champion in St. Teresa.
Right.
You don't have a perennial 5A power in Highland. So I think when you see a couple teams like that removed, everybody, the natural is, well, your schedule's easier. Well, we actually dropped Lincoln, who wasn't a playoff team, and pick up Robinson, who was, Mount Carmel, who was, and Centralia, who was. So, right. And I know Robinson graduated a number of kids. They were kind of senior dominated, but still, I mean, those guys, they've had winning seasons, so they're used to winning, and it's not like we have a ton of experience. And then you go week 2 with Mount Carmel, as I said earlier, like they've got 9 starters back on offense, like 7 back on defense. Their quarterback just committed SIU Carbondale, and they're going to be in the quarters or semis playing unity, and whoever wins that game will probably end up in the state championship game. So that's week 2, and then week 3 is Mater Dei. Well, we know what Mater Dei is always like. And then week 9 playing Centralia. Well, Centralia was a 5A second-round playoff team. So everybody, it's not the Centralia from when people think of them not being, and they got a ton of kids back. So, yeah. And the conference schedule, and I get asked about this. Well, hey, what's the conference look like? Well, Muhammad graduated everybody. Well, they did, but these kids playing won a ton of games at the lower level, and they practiced against those kids all year.
Sure.
Mount Zion returns every skill kid, and we saw what they could do last year.
Mm-hmm.
They beat us running 30 plays of offense. We had 80 plays of offense. Mattoon's in year 2 of a new coach, so you figure they're going to be improved. Charleston returns almost their entire roster, and they hired back Coach Halsey, who had a ton of success there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Taylorville basically didn't graduate anybody of any significance, so they've got everybody back. So I think from top to bottom, from a competitive standpoint, the schedule is much more difficult from top to bottom.
Yeah,
you just don't see that heavyweight, like, hey, they've got a chance to win a state championship, that maybe you would have seen in the past couple years.
Yeah, and in Centralia, I think people can still even now fall into that trap. I mean, there was a long stretch in there where Centralia just didn't have that culture in the school for football. And you're familiar with it because you.
Yeah, I mean, I was there for 3 years of that stretch. I mean, where it was just hard. And at the end of the day, it gets back to they're still playing Mount Vernon, Cahokia, like the people, the level of competition that they're used to playing. It's the same thing with Highland playing Mascoutah and some of the people they triads. You kind of get that just because that record may not be they're playing some people.
Sure, absolutely. So it's. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it should be, a solid, challenging schedule. You've laid that out. I guess what are you looking to see in week 1? There's just things that you don't.
Yeah, if you want to know the truth, Dustin, I'm anxious to get going. Just when you do so much against yourself, you're tired of seeing each other. Uh-huh. It's like they know exactly what you're going to do. You know exactly what they're going to do. It gets chippy. And we've been going since January. We started lifting in January and going. And so I think our guys, I'm just anxious. I'm always anxious to see them get started and going. And it's at that point in the year where, hey, let's go and see what happens. So I'm anxious to see how our kids play on Friday. Like I said, we've got even the inexperienced parts. Before James' injury, I felt real good, but by the time we get there, we're going to be okay. I'm anxious to see them. I'm anxious to see them go. And just like I've said before, like, I'm not saying we're going to be a quarterfinal team and it's going to be 2018 all over again. But 2018, everybody thought the world was ending. when that big group graduated. And these kids just now getting their chance. Well, it doesn't mean they weren't any good. Like those kids in front of them were pretty good.
Yeah.
And so just because these kids haven't gotten their chance yet, it doesn't mean that you're going to struggle. So I'm anxious to see them because I've seen the work that they put in. I've seen what they've done in some lower level situations. I've seen what they've done in the weight room for 2 and 3 years. So I'm anxious for them to get their chance and see how we do.
Yeah. I get to the point now about this time of year, every year, people come up to me and say, so how the Heart's going to be this year? What do you think? And I'm like, I got to see a game, I got to see,
you and me both.
A couple games. Because it's impossible to know.
Yeah.
Kids change so much from year to year, and they spend so much time working on their bodies too, that you never know who's going to emerge.
Well, the other part, Dustin and Mike, and we deal with it. The rosters change. So even though we think people got everybody back, well, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knew anything about Eli Mittendorf. Nobody knew anything about Jack Harper. Nobody knew anything, so and you can lose people, you can gain people. So I'm with you until you get something on film in week 1, you really don't know. I have an idea how I think we're going to play and how I think it's going to shake out. And I hope there's a couple spots. I hope I'm pleasantly surprised.
Sure.
It's the same thing I told Greg, and I tell anybody that listen. I honestly think this about our kids. We will not be any fun to play.
Yeah.
No matter what our situation is, we will not be fun to play because our kids will be physical. Our kids will play hard and compete their tails off for 48 minutes. So I do know that. And I think this day and age, if you can do that, it's worth an extra win or two.
Sure. And one last thing on the schedule, do you kind of like having new teams on the schedule? Is that a new challenge, or
my big thing is this has been my issue with the schedule. And it's why I'm a big proponent of districts. I just want to play people that look like us.
Okay.
I want to play people that are going to be similar to us in the standpoint of I don't need to go play 5-18. Football's a different animal. Like I don't need to go do that. That doesn't. If you can guarantee me 6 conference wins or 7 conference wins, and I don't have to worry about the play, and I don't have to worry about that. Okay, well now I'll go play a Highlander or a Mascuda or a Triad or something. But what do I have to gain from that when it's already going to be? And football, unlike other sports, there's a physical difference. And when you get into, okay, well, coach, you got 750 kids, they got 1,000. Well, that's a class.
Yes.
That's 20 to 30 more football players than what we have. Well, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I'm saying here, like all of a sudden we get a couple injuries. Well, that's a big deal. When I was at Lincoln, when we had 90 juniors and seniors, it wasn't that big a deal. But so that's my thing with so from a schedule standpoint, I'm just happy to play similar people as us.
Mm-hmm.
And the tough part when you have to go schedule games, what people don't understand is if you've had any success, people don't want to play you.
Sure.
And everybody that we've played in our playoff runs, they won't return a phone call to play us.
Yeah.
And it's not like the Breeze Centrals, the Freeburgs, the Murphys, but like they won't play us. Well, you're going to be playing 4-18, and so that's the frustrating thing. So then the only people that we have left to pick from are Highland, St. Teresa, well, which is fine, but like our conference is tough enough. Like we're loaded with 5A teams in the conference as it is.
It's tough when the choice is between bigger schools or smaller schools that are insanely
that are going to win a state title. Yeah, I mean it's just and it's hard. That's why the district model appeals to me because you're playing people of similar value and physically you're not going to get hurt. T-Town can go play East St. Louis in basketball and they're not going to get physically hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Or our guys can go play Lincoln Way East in basketball or baseball, and you're not going to get physically hurt. Well, in our sport, you do.
Yeah.
And so when everybody says we'll play up competition level, well, it's a little different deal now when you're getting into the physicality of it and numbers of it, and like I said, when everybody says, well, it's just one, just 200 kids. Well, that's 25 football players. Well, that's a big deal.
Yep.
Coach, were you at East on the staff up at East?
I was not. I was at every Lincoln Way. Well, I was at Lincoln Way's other now. I was at Lincoln Way Central.
Okay.
And then I was at Lincoln Way North.
Okay.
Was the other one. Lincoln Way North doesn't exist now.
Right. Right.
And so all the guys that I was with at Lincoln Way North, most of them are now either at East or West.
East or West. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty good program.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah, they've been pretty good. Yeah.
I know that Jan Mikowski kid on their basketball team, but he's also, I think, coming in as a senior, one of the top-rated linemen in the Midwest.
Yeah, they're pretty
big
good.
boy.
They've got the best of both worlds. Ironically, their head football coach is from Monticello.
Right, right.
He's a 217 guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and their basketball team had some boys that probably could have suited up and played football too.
Yeah, they got some, but again, like you deal with, 100 to 110 juniors and seniors.
Yeah.
I mean, 80, 85 sophomores and 90 freshmen. I mean, that's what people don't understand. Like and even for us, Muhammad's got 120 kids in their program. Well, that's a huge advantage when you're playing in our conference.
Sure.
Absolutely. And it's an advantage that Effingham has had over some of the schools in the conference too, to be able to, field those lower level teams, although the games.
Yeah, it is. And we're struggling a little bit right now, Dustin, with our numbers. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's a little frustrating because the program, the kids that came before the program has had success. So for our numbers to be as low as they are is a little frustrating. And it's something that we're trying to address and trying to figure out what the answer is. So we're going to try and do some things. We started to try and do them last spring. We're going to do some things this spring where we're trying to get those young kids out on the field just to get them around it. I think some of it has to do with COVID. You go back, that dirty word, you go back a few years, but they weren't allowed to play anything but soccer or baseball. You couldn't play basketball. You couldn't play football. You couldn't do a lot of things. And so now you're seeing that 2-year stretch where kids weren't around it, weren't playing it.
Right.
But we can't. We're struggling with getting back-to-back years. We've got a small senior class, decent sized junior class, but then a big sophomore class, small freshman class. I think the 8th grade class will be a big number class for us. Yeah, but I don't know that the 7th grade class is a big number class, but then the 6th grade class is. So it's just some inconsistency. And when we had that stretch from 2017 to 2020, we had back-to-back classes, and which I think it gets back into the numbers thing, like with Muhammad, where that's a big advantage. So, 2018, we only had 12 seniors, but we had 25 juniors and 28 sophomores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can kind of offset that. So we've got to find a way to try and get those numbers back up, and so hopefully we can do that.
Mike, you got anything else for Coach before we let him get on to his?
No. Good luck. It's hard to beat a Friday night out there, Coach.
It is.
Played for Coach Klosterman. It's awesome.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you guys, and appreciate all you guys do. And you want to get back together in the middle of the season or whatever, let me know.
I think that'd be great. I was actually going to suggest that maybe like a little mid-season, mid-season talk about where we're at and where you hope you're going. I think that'd be fantastic if you're up for it.
We can do that. Mix in a little college football with it and have a good time.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Coach, thanks for joining us. I'll look forward to seeing you down at Robinson Friday night, and good luck with the season, and hopefully keep everybody in good shape this week and have everybody that's currently still available that night for a good game.
I tell you what, buddy, we're going to have our fingers crossed because I'm hoping for the same thing.
All right.
Hey, Brett, I did see you playing a golf scramble this summer. How'd you play?
I did. I'm fortunate. I had fun. I got to play a little bit more this summer. Guys like Jeff Weymouth and Brian Papa and that group, Kerry Harper and Eric Calver. So we had fun. Well, I think that day we were.
Teachers out there, but group of teachers
12 under maybe, but we had some fun. Got out there, got to their place for a great cause. So hopefully something we can do a little bit more. I always wanted to hop in on the Kerner thing. It's just hard because we have practice and we're in season, so it doesn't fit. I understand why they do it when they do, but something that I love to do is just I don't get a whole lot of time to do it.
Yep.
Well, Coach, we'll let you go. You can, if you want to jump off. Mike and I have got a few more things to talk about, but we appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys play this year.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
All right,
see you, Coach.
Thanks so much to Coach Brett Hefner, like we mentioned, the 9th year coach at Effingham. About just under a week away from getting that season started. Again, they're at Robinson to get the year started, but if you want to catch a home game, your first chance to do that will be the following Friday, September 1st. Mount Carmel comes in, and it's going to be a tough one. You know, Mount Carmel has got that they've got that football what do you call it? They've got a strong history of football there. And
yeah, they do. And one of their coaches from back in the day, John Hart, I knew in college. He's a Newton kid, and he and I graduated the same year. We had a lot of classes together at Eastern. Great guy. And Mount Carmel's this way with every sport. They're always good, and they're not afraid to tell you how good they are.
Well, that's also true. Yeah, I don't get on the old IHSS message board anymore, but it used to be just dominated with Mount Carmel football talk, and you know, they were people who were proud of their school and proud of what they did. And you can't blame them for it, but
no.
in token, it always made it. If you happen to cover a team or have a kid on a team that played against them and beat them, well, it made it feel just a little bit better. But I'm looking forward to going to their place next year because it's such an interesting field. I
better take some mosquito spray with you, Whitey.
Yeah, I just want to get a look at it. It sounds like it's unique, and I don't know how that. I don't necessarily know how that translates to broadcasting from there, but we'll find out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you stay on top of the hill and you don't have to walk all the way down and then all the way back up that hill. So,
well, especially lugging the equipment because if I figure if I try to make Greg carry all that equipment up that hill, he'll
Greg's still going to be helping you next year.
Well, we'll see.
That may be the debut of Statman Matt Robbins.
Yeah, we'll find out. But yeah, Greg, we talked about this a little bit last week, but it'll still be me and Greg on the football games this year. I think that's easier for him to, with his schedule and wanting to, not be out so much. Friday nights still work pretty well for him, and I hope he does football for a long time still.
I do too.
So, just kind of touching on what I said to Coach while he was on, but I've given up on trying to predict how an Effingham football season is going to go because I've been wrong in both ways so many times. It's very difficult to know how kids are going to respond when they come out on that field and it gets real. Practice
injuries, and Brett kind of touched on a little bit with their numbers translates into depth. And, this front seven, really, really good defensively.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, heaven forbid, a couple kids get tweaked here, tweaked there, which can happen very easily, in the game of football.
Sure.
Then that's the big unknown. How can we stay healthy, and who is going to, as he said, pleasantly surprise him? And I'm sure there's some kids who are now going to get an opportunity and exceed his expectations. There'll be other kids who won't meet their expectations who are now getting, and that's just part of the high school kids,
Yeah.
These are 16, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Right. And, he mentioned this, and of course, it's common sense to anybody who understands what's going on out there, even a little bit, or especially someone who's played. But, so much of a game is decided in the trenches, and people don't get that, or it's hard for them to wrap their minds around it. And even I'll say we broadcast a game, and whose names are we calling out? It's the quarterback, it's the running backs, it's the receivers.
Right.
But it's so important what's happening there on the line of scrimmage. It dictates what those other names get to do. And, we'll see if the offense struggles for whatever reason. You can't just automatically assume it's because, Gage Gillum's the new quarterback and he's not getting the job done. Well, who knows if he's got the time to make the reads or if there's running room for them to be able to run the ball and for him to, have the necessary time. There's so many moving parts, and football's a deal where there's 22 guys on the field, and if one person doesn't do his job, then the whole thing can go down the toilet. You have to understand that. And that's, by that token, that's why I hate to jump out and make predictions with other sports like basketball. There's at the end of the day, there's only a certain number of kids that are going to impact, what happens on the floor during a varsity game. It's a little easier to try and say this team's going to be pretty good or this team's not, right? So with all that said, I'm looking forward to it. Excited for another season to start.
It is, and it's always great. And I feel like football sets the tone for the school year. Everything going on in the building, not just sports. But I feel like those early fall sports, and especially football, they can, good start to a football season, kind of get your school and kids start getting excited. And the kids who are the fans, hey, we got Mater Dei Friday night. Let's go. Or we got Mount Carmel and we just beat Robinson, and let's get everybody out there. And it just does things for your whole school and the community. I think you've seen this community rally around when Effingham's playing well. I mean, you go to a game and you see a lot of St. Anthony kids there. You see a lot of T-Town kids there. You'll see kids from other schools who'll come over and watch it who don't have it. And, it's kind of like that, the light for a moth. It draws people in and it's fun. There's nothing like, I love standing. Last couple of years, we've kind of stood behind the north end zone down there, and I've just kind of stood down there and watched, and it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, you know what? I'll take that seat in the press box though. And
I've tried to get up there in the press box sometimes, but sometimes it's hard for me to convince people I need to be up there.
I don't know. I think a big part of the deal is just act like you belong there.
I know. Well, I can act like it. That's part of the problem.
Or you could just be a Hall of Famer and just go up there and no one's going to tell you any different because
just stand behind you. I understand. He's he only does that when it's either really, really hot, cold, or wet.
Well, we like having Larry up there. Generally he'll point something out to me that I never.
Oh yeah, he's not bashful. Trust me, he's not bashful about pointing things out to
you. I don't know. It's going to be hot this week down in Robinson. I think Thursday is supposed to be the apex of the high temperatures.
Thursday, the worst day. Yeah, I think Wednesday, Thursday are the two bad days.
Yeah.
We're kind of. I just sent a message out to all on my distribution for my golf kids and their parents. So I just said, here's what, we're at the mercy of everyone else. We're on the road, so other schools are in charge of the wet bulb test. So,
well,
all right.
And
only
other
one
things
sport has started this year, Whitey.
What's that?
Only one sport has started so far.
Right, the golf. Yeah, we got some baseball games on the radio this week, but
I know you guys are doing the wooden bat.
Yeah, doing the wooden bat.
That's always a good tournament.
And T-Town and St. Anthony Wednesday night, by the way. That's a night game.
They may turn around and who else is it Dietrich, North Clay, St. Anthony, and T-Town and the wooden bat?
That's what it was last year. If I told you that I knew which schools were there this year, I really only know that it starts at 9 and I'm supposed to be there. That's all I got for you at the moment.
I understand. Well, golf has started.
Yes.
And really, boys have played more than girls, and it just seems like it always get off more of a robust start, but it's been pretty good. I mean, Effingham, I think got 7th at Taylorville, went up there and played the first day they could play. I think Max Sechrist, who's new to Jeff's team, really good golfer, had been one of Brett's football players for the last couple of years. Now as a junior, he switched over to golf. He had a top 10 finish. St. Anthony played up in Bloomington. I think they finished 7th up there. They shot a 308, which is kind of a trend for them because I think at least 3 of their first 5 matches, they've shot 308. So they were kind of on that number. So they've done that. And then all 3 of us were at the St. Anthony Invitational. St. Anthony won that again, shooting a 308. Effingham shot 317 for second. We were 7th with a 335. I was pleasantly surprised. I had 2 freshmen both score well for us. Colin Pennington shot 73. Isaac Weber, a freshman, shot 84. And then quality coaching, I had Hayden Tebby as an individual. He shot an 81. So we actually would have been about 8 shots lower had the coach known who to have in the lineup. You know, I filled out their own lineup card. But, you know, it's a pretty good tournament. And then we turned around on that Monday and went over to Robinson and played. And St. Anthony shot their standard 308. P-Town shot 317, Whitey. We were hanging. My freshmen shot 79 and 80. Cohen shot 78. Brody Taylor shot an 80. So we went 78, 79, 80, 80. St. Anthony Troy shot 74. Dakota Flagg 77. Lane Ludwig 78. Charlie Wakeman 79. Schmidt 81. Preston Phillips didn't have a good day that day. I think he shot 90. But good tournament. We got second there, which is really good for us. And then we were all down, or us in Effingham, or us in St. Anthony, actually. We're down at Red Lake on Thursday. St. Anthony finished second. And Red Lake shot a 299 to finish second. We shot a 333 for sixth. They had a couple golfers. I'm trying to think who made top 10 for them. Joey Trupiano was 8th, and Preston Phillips was 10th. Both was 73s. Good tournament. You know, 299. They got beat by Benton, shot a 296. So it was really good. We were 333. We were 10 shots behind Litchfield for 5th, and it was pretty good. I know the girls started out. They had the invite up at Charleston. All 3 schools were girls scramble. So I don't have as many girls schools in front of me. I know their girls. Say that the girls won an invite. I forget where that was. May have been the Charleston.
You know what else is?
Oh, they were T-Town had a little invitational. T-Town Effingham.
You know what else has started though, Mike? And this is pretty big news, but Effingham Park District soccer has also started, and my son's team got a 1-0 win to get their season underway.
So this is where
Watch this.
When I used to go out in my yard and try to figure out what I'm going to do for today, and I'd hear all this yelling and screaming at Evergreen Park. Is that where you are, Wendy?
You know, I was not actually there, but I hear it's a zoo. I hear there's a lot of people.
Oh, trust me. From experience, my kids played, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. They used to play in fields around the old Y out there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. They, my daughter had a softball game down in Kinmundy, the same.
Junior high baseball and softball is going full strength.
Going strong. Yeah. So I was down there watching that. My wife went to the soccer game. We split the difference on that, and then they headed down to Kinmundy because it was a doubleheader. And let me tell you something, it was scintillating action there in Kinmundy.
I believe it. I remember the days of my daughter playing junior high softball, and I had, but Zach played football at Effingham. He was around all that. Hey, Mac, when are you going to make me some more cookies? Butterscotch oatmeal, and I can only have one like every day or every other day, so they last a lot longer than they used to.
Well, she's got to make some for a bake sale at the church coming up, so might be able to coax some out of there. Yeah, junior high softball, the thing I have learned from seeing some of these games is that get them out of here. Got dogs fighting in the background all of a sudden. The thing I have found is that the pitching is actually probably a little better than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
I think more people just work on it. They understand that you got to start them young, and so we're sort of getting there. I
think we faced in junior high. Morgan faced the Fisher girl from Matt Toon, who's really, really good.
Yeah,
and then the Mole girl from Shelbyville, who ended up going to Arkansas pitching.
Yeah. Now Grace gives lessons. I know. Hey, come on, we better just wrap this up because
we're good.
It's turned into chaos.
We talk football, we talk golf. We're good, Whitey.
We'll have a little baseball to talk about next week. Games that I actually saw in person. So that'll be good as long as they happen, which I assume they will. And
Saturday is supposed to be a break in the heat, so it's supposed to be low 80s Saturday.
And of course, we'll have that first Effingham football game to talk about.
Yes.
And we will probably continue to not talk about Cardinals baseball. That's
one game winning streak, Whitey. One game winning streak.
One game winning streak. All right. Well, Mike, we'll talk to you then. We'll talk to you in a week.
Sounds good.
See ya.
See ya.